We don't have a looming problem. We have a right now crisis. We have malnourished children that are obese. They're overfed and undernourished. And this is something that can be solved in one generation. We are poisoning our young people. These are Fruit Loops in Europe. These are Fruit Loops here. You have no idea what's in these.
I don't know how MAHA is going to change the world. I don't know what we can do if we can't get people back to critical thinking.
You can't be telling people what they need to do. If you talk to people about what they deserve and what their children deserve, it's hard for them to push back against that.
Can we get out of that immediate space and actually get this country to invest in something like feeding our children better?
All that's necessary for evil to prevail is for good men to do nothing. We just need to speak up.
Good.
We are. Oh, how you doing?
Right.
Good to see you, man.
Well, I definitely want to thank Noah for making this possible in this beautiful home and this snowstorm in the summer here in Dallas. It's quite a beautiful experience. I just want to take a moment to just say, I don't know, many of you know this, but my entire career in media starts with Dr. Phil. I was a struggling filmmaker making my own little music videos and short films and things. And mostly I was a waiter for about 20 years. And a friend of mine called one day and said, hey, you know how to shoot a video camera, right? I said, yeah. And he said, would you want to come and shoot on the Dr. Phil show? I said, sure. And it was the first Love Smart Island out on Catalina Island, Dr. Phil.
Really?
In 2005. I came out, I was just one of the little side guys just chasing some of these wild couples around that were screaming at each other. And went on to have, I think I would say I almost everything I know about media I learned from Carla Pennington, your executive producer, and spent years making my way up through the Dr. Phil show. And then you and Jay created the Doctor's Television show, and I moved over and became a producer there, which set me on this entire journey. As they say, life is what happens while you're making plans. I didn't get the Steven Spielberg career. I think, is this mic in and out? Yeah. Maybe give me the handheld. All right. That sound, there we go. That sounds better. Anyway, through that entire experience, I never thought I'd be in health and wellness and psychology and mental health. And I found myself in love with medicine and science. And of course, it led me on a journey of investigation to Robert Kennedy Jr. And honestly, Dr. Phil, none of that would have been possible without you.
Well, thank you for saying that. And I'm the same way about Bobby Kennedy. I think he is the right man in the right place at the right time. So it's funny that we've intersected back this way. So
It's true.
And Bobby is going to be in town Monday. We're doing a town hall at Merit TV, just right up the road here, not 5 minutes from here. We're doing a town hall meeting there and talking about the first 100 days of the administration. And of course, he wasn't confirmed on the first day, but he didn't start working the day he was confirmed. He's been working a long time before that on everything that's going on. And he and I are in constant contact, and I just believe in what he's doing. So I'm happy to be here to talk about that for everybody here.
Yeah, it was really amazing to watch you as we were, traveling around the country as an independent, and you reached out. And I have to say, watching you in that space, by the way, Dr. Phil, moving from just health and wellness to watching you interviewing President Trump and Robert Kennedy Jr. And I know you reached out to, I believe it was Kamala, I'm sure, and President Biden, but was that hard to move into a political space? Had you just been keeping your mouth shut on it for decades?
Well, this may seem like a distinction without a difference, but I don't consider myself as talking about politics. I talk about cultural issues And I really don't know much about politics, nor do I care to, actually. Like I've seen these after school specials where they talk about how a bill becomes a bill.
Yeah.
And and I would hate to take a test on that because I don't know or care. I talk about cultural issues because I think the strength of this country, the backbone of this country, is the family. And so I talk about things as they affect real people facing real challenges, looking for real solutions. And I don't think I'm talking about politics. I think politicians are talking about cultural issues, as they should be. And the two do cross over. But my interest is really when they start talking about policy and that sort of thing. People say politics are local, and I disagree. I think politics are personal. At some point, even though it may not be stylish to say so, I think at some point people say, what's in this for me and my family? That may seem selfish. I don't think it is. I think we have to take care of our own house. And I think at some point people say, how does this affect the health of my children, for example? The life expectancy that I have as leaders of my family, and how does it affect our family, then our community, then our state, then our nation? I think it comes down to saying, what impact does this have on us? If I have an autistic child, a child on the spectrum, if I have a child eating school lunches, if I'm shopping for my family, if I'm dealing with big pharma and buying prescriptions and medication, it starts there. And then we find out we're not alone. A lot of other people are fighting the same battles that we're fighting. And I think that's why RFK Jr. resonates so well with people now, because he's dealing with the issues that families are facing every day in terms of their health. I mean, the thing that excites me most about Bobby Kennedy and his agenda right now is we don't have a looming problem. We have a right now crisis. We have a right now epidemic in this country in terms of chronic disease with our young people, mentally and emotionally and physically. And this is something that can be solved in one generation. This isn't something where you say, okay, let's plug into this, and 50 years from now, 100 years from now, we'll see this begin to turn. No, we can make changes right now that can solve this problem in this generation. And I have a theory about politics. I say I'm not into politics, and I'm not, but I have a theory. I think by and large, we have non-problem solvers assigned to solve problems.
Yeah.
I kid you not.
Yeah.
I think we have non-problem solvers that have been sent up there without term limits to solve problems. And I think somebody whispered in their ear, if you solve this problem, you're out of a job. That's not true. We have plenty more we can assign to you as soon as you get through with this one.
Right.
But we have non-problem solvers assigned to solve problems, and they just don't solve them. And Bobby is different. He truly is there to solve problems, and then he'll move on to something else. It's not like he doesn't have a range of skills and abilities. And so he truly is trying to solve problems. And there are things we can change right now. We are poisoning our young people. And if we stop doing that, we're going to see chronic disease. We have an average of 1.4 chronic diseases per young person right now. 70% of our young people can't even qualify for military service.
Yeah.
Did you hear what I said?
Yeah.
70%, God forbid we get in a war, everybody will show up and say, well, I'm sorry, you don't qualify. And so what we'll do is what America does, we'll lower the standards and put a bunch of pansies out there to fight, I guess.
Right.
They can't qualify for service. We've got to get people in shape. We got to quit poisoning them. We got to start getting them in shape. And that's what RFK is about doing here. He's going to stop poisoning these young people And these chronic diseases, which are man-made, you don't see them. You don't see those levels in Europe. You don't see them in Norway. You don't see them in Sweden. You don't see them in Switzerland. You see them here, and there are 10,000 chemicals in our foods that you don't have in European foods. Gee, I wonder if there's a connection.
Exactly right.
I think so. Is this a soapbox?
Yeah, it sounds like, but you're wearing it well.
It seems like I'm on a soapbox.
You know, I when I worked on the Dr. Phil show, and then of course the doctors, a lot of pharmaceutical sponsors, a lot of the work that you've done, you've worked hand in hand, with the medical establishment. When you first decided to interview Robert Kennedy Jr., I mean, of course, he's one of the most controversial figures in that space. And, you've been pro-vaccine, as far as I could tell. Certainly the doctors was when I was working on it. Were you nervous about getting in that topic? Because I thought you handled it really well, but was there trepidation to step into a space where it was so taboo? And in media, it's almost like now when you do an interview with someone, they immediately connect them to you. Media has changed. If you're giving them a platform, then you are also a bad guy too. What was it to finally, decide to have that interview and go into one of the most controversial spaces we know in media?
Well, I had him on just not long ago, and he made the comment. He said, I don't know if you're aware, but you're the only one that would put me on the air on network television.
Yeah.
He said, nobody else would, and you interviewed me for 90 minutes and put it on all of your platforms, and we had millions and millions of views. And look, as a country, I think we have ADD. We're all, you all read headlines, right?
No.
You read the headlines and then move on. Nobody drills down. The longer the article goes, the fewer people read the whole article, including me.
Mm-hmm.
And I hate articles that start out with a story. Laura was born in a log cabin. Oh, God. I go down until they get to the point. I skip all that and get to the point. And he was saying nobody would get past the clickbait headlines about him. The whale head and the this and the that.
Bear and the Central Park.
All of that sort of stuff. And if you actually drill down past the clickbait headlines and look at what he's actually said about some of these most controversial things, he raises really good points. Somebody smarter than me said, I would rather have questions I can't answer than answers I can't question.
Right.
And think about that. When you're stifling all of this, where you're not allowing open debate, you're having answers you can't question. They just throw out from CDC or from Fauci or whoever. Now, there's a guy that didn't understand that too much time in the spotlight fades the suit. Really. He never saw a mic he didn't love. I counted some times where he would change positions 3 times in a day.
Yeah.
About, do you wear a mask? Do you not wear a mask? What kind of mask do you wear? Blah, 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 blah. But if you actually drill down on what Bobby had said about some of these things, the article didn't pay off the headline.
Right.
Because what he was saying is, we need to look at the science on these things. We need to, fluoride, for example. He said, I got problems with high levels of fluoride. And I was like, oh my God. So now fluoride's poison. He goes, no, the point is, high levels of fluoride create problems.
Right.
And it's now in toothpaste, which it didn't used to be. So it doesn't need to be in water, which it was, but now we don't need. And it's been taken out of a lot of the water supplies in other countries. If they're taking it out, why would we not be willing to at least address the issue? Yeah. And that's what he says. He's not saying radical things. He's saying, let's ask the question. And when he says science, he says good science, gold standard science. And
By independent, objective,
there's
observers.
the word,
Right.
independent, because
Right.
you'll get a top drawer university, but their grants come from somebody with a horse in the race. It's funded by Pfizer or Eli Lilly, or it's funded by somebody. And I'm sorry, if I'm buying a car and the mechanic that checked it gets paid if I buy it and not if I don't, that's not independent.
Right. Exactly.
So when we say gold standard science, you want people that truly are doing double-blind studies. They don't have an investment in the outcome. It has to be replicated by another investigator, and that's just hasn't been happening. And I think that's what's going to happen now, and we need that.
I want to talk to you a little bit about something that I think I learned from you, which is the psychology of television. Really, when every season we would come back, and Dr. Phil would actually sit the staff down, and he'd been doing research over our time off, new numbers coming in on the attention span of citizens. And we would change the whole style of the show. I remember once you were saying it's now 45 seconds is the amount of time that you're actually holding attention before you're losing them. So your videos now, which we're using, we were at that point telling backstories of families and couples that were 3 minutes long or maybe 5 minutes. And we decided, no, it's going to be 45-second pieces. We'll go to stage, then come out and go back to a 45-second and tell the story in shorter pieces in order to hold the attention span of the viewers. And for those of you that saw the documentary Vaxxed, which puts me in the middle of this, one of the major changes when I met Andy Wakefield and I sat and he said the film was finished, and I was saying, there's 7 people in the world are going to watch this. It's too deep. It's too scientific. It's got graphs and things that no one's going to understand and some personal stories. I really reflected on what you had taught me. And what I did was, if you watch Vax, there's science being spoken. So we have scientists, I had graphs and animations, and I had personal stories talking about vaccine injury. And if you watch the movie, what I did was I started breaking it into 2-minute segments so that you would only see a scientist for 2 minutes, and then we would go to a personal story and see a young child story, and then I would go to the graph and animation for 2 minutes and then come back, and it does it through so that I can keep resetting your attention span for this very deep and emotional information. So if you watch it, that's one of the things that took about it. It took us 7 or 8 months to recut and rebuild that film into what it was. But I say that because, Dr. Phil, I feel like now, I don't know if you've looked into it. I'm curious about the hertz rates in televisions. It seems like, mainstream media can make people cut off their own arms within minutes through some sort of power of suggestion. Just looking at this Tesla, I don't want to get into the politics of this, but this whole Tesla story, I grew up a Democrat liberal from Boulder, Colorado. That's obviously changed in the journey that I've been on. But Elon Musk was a hero 2 years ago. Tesla is the greatest environmental car that's ever been on the planet, if you're into that. And it felt like within 3 days, Democrats were keying, some of them in firebombing cars and politicians supporting it. And I'm just like, how are they moving people to be so crazy so quickly?
I'm so glad you brought this up. I'm so glad you brought this up. We've lost the skill of critical thinking.
Yeah.
Think about what's being taught in the universities right now. And y'all may know that I've called the elite universities out really hard on their pro-Hamas. For a while, it was pro-Palestinian, then pro-Hamas. They just, they're fostering intellectual rot. And they're not teaching critical thinking. When you've got a group marching down the concourse at Harvard University with a poster this size that says "Gays for Gaza," you're
perfect example.
you're not thinking critically. Because march your ass into Gaza with that and see how far you get.
Right.
You'll get about 8 feet.
Right.
Then they'll have a basket full of 8 feet. So what's happening here is we've got the tail wagging the dog. I wrote a book called We've Got Issues.
Yeah, good title.
How to Stand Strong for America's Soul and Sanity. And I talk about critical thinking in there because we've got to step back and say, okay, I'm not going to be programmed. I'm going to actually think for myself here. And climate change, look, we all want a green planet. I mean, look at this beautiful house that y'all have in this trees and water and snowing in May. It's great, right? We all want that. We want our children to have a great planet and all. And this became a religion for the Democrats. But we all want it. Everybody agrees with that. And he was the hero, the biggest manufacturer of electronic vehicles. But it's not the mainstream. It's not the heartland of America. It's what I call the tyranny of the fringe. You've got activists that are really loud that are driving the narrative. That's the problem. Only 23% of Americans use Twitter or X. And 10% of that 23% do 80% of the post.
Wow, yeah.
So you've got a really small group, and then you've got bots. And everybody knows what a bot is. It's a fake account, right, that is automated to post things up. What people don't realize is when they go get bots, we're talking about in groups of tens of thousands of bots that they put onto an issue. And you can spot a fake account when it says, I have 3 followers and the account's 2 days old. Okay. And I hate you, go kill yourself. Okay, that's a fake account. But there are bot farms that have accounts that are 12 and 15 years old, and they follow each other back and forth, so they look legitimate. They have pictures, they have, like on vacation, they look real, but they're not. And so they drive sentiment, they plant and drive, and they're triggered to the algorithm. And so it starts a trend going. And so here you've got somebody that's making environmentally friendly vehicles, and then he starts doing things they don't like in terms of eliminating government waste, fraud, and abuse. Like, that's a bad thing. Everybody's complained about that forever. But then when somebody starts doing it with intention, then all of a sudden climate change is no longer a religion. Right. Now, all of a sudden, this is offensive. That's because a small group of people are driving this. And let's think critically about that. When they go shoot up a dealership in Phoenix and they shoot up and vandalize cars, where do you get Tesla parts?
U.S. mostly,
You get them from Tesla.
Right, yeah.
Which means you're doing more business with Elon Musk. Are you shitting me?
Right.
And when you go attack some guy and set his car on fire, he's never met Elon Musk. This is some guy that agreed with all of you that are now attacking him and putting his name and address on the internet and saying, I won't take it down till you can show proof that you sold your Tesla. So this is a guy that just was trying to do the right thing, but now he's got a target on his back. Critically thinking, you're attacking people that have nothing to do with Doge. It has nothing to do with Elon Musk other than spending more money on him. So his stock cycle's down for a little while. It'll come right back. They're not hurting Elon Musk.
Where do we get to critical thinking? Where is that falling? Is it elementary school? Is it our children? Is it in the family? Is it in universities? If you were to say, if I could fix this one sector, this is where we could return critical thinking in, and because it's critical. I don't know how MAHA is going to change the world. I don't know what we can do if we can't get people back to critical thinking.
Well, that's what we have to do, and that's why I'm out here with you on a Saturday night instead of being lazy like a lizard on a rock, which I would usually be doing. But this matters. We've got to get people energized. We have to get people to actually realize, look, there aren't Republican children.
Right.
There aren't Democrat children. There are just children. We're poisoning our children. And we have to start calling it what it is. I hate it when people say fentanyl overdoses. Those aren't overdoses. That's poisoning.
Yeah.
100% of pills that kids buy on social media platforms like Snapchat, 100% are counterfeit.
Wow.
And 48% of them have lethal doses of fentanyl in them. Did you hear what I just said?
That's amazing.
48% of pills that kids get on the internet have lethal doses of fentanyl in them. You got a 1 in 2 chance of waking up dead. And 100% of those pills are counterfeit. I was doing a show on this with DEA agents, and it was about halfway through the show, and I just said, stop watching this show. John Perry, you were there. I said, stop watching this show. Don't listen to anything else I have to say. Stop watching this show. Go call your children, your grandchildren, your nephews, your nieces, and tell them, do not buy pills on the internet. You got a 1 in 2 chance of poisoning yourself and being dead. Don't do it. It's critical. Call to action. Turn me off. Go call every young person you know and warn them this is a threat. That's all manufactured in China. It's shipped to the Sinaloa cartel. It comes across the border into America, and they've seized enough. Just what they seized, which they estimate to be between 10 and 12%, is enough to kill every American walking. That's a problem. That's been gotten under control because now that's not coming across the border near as much.
Shut down the border helps.
And it's the same thing here. We've got to get people to start thinking critically about how we're poisoning children with these 10,000 chemicals that are going into these foods. We did a MAHA show with MAHA moms. I don't know if any of the MAHA moms that were here were on the show. They were here, but we had just a baked chicken. When you look at the label of a baked chicken, you know what it should say? Chicken. It had like 14 ingredients on there.
Oh my God.
And if you can't pronounce it, you shouldn't eat it. Seriously, if you can't pronounce it, you shouldn't eat it. That's a chemical.
You know, one of the questions I get from having worked at CBS, and, you know, let's take, for example, 2 weeks ago, Robert Kennedy Jr. Steps up as HHS secretary for his first announcement, makes this incredible declaration that autism has now hit 1 in 31 children in America. It's more prevalent in boys, so that means it looks like 1 in 20 across, I think, 10 satellites across America. And then a really shocking statistic in California, where they're really drilling down harder than anywhere. They're saying that their 4-year-olds are coming in at 1 in 12.5 with autism. And just so you know, when they say 4 years old, we have to imagine you usually wait till 8 to say you've captured everybody. So they haven't even captured everybody in that group. There's a good chance that that number is going to dive below 1 in 10, which are just the most shocking numbers we could ever imagine. Some parents here I know have autistic children. I've interviewed in my experience with Vaxxed. Then Robert Kennedy Jr. does something so shocking. He states that this is officially an epidemic, that the HHS is now going to call this an epidemic. And to me, it was like, no, duh. Why did this take, how many decades to point out the obvious? And then he said, it was very specific about, about 26% of this group are the ones that are severely autistic, are unable to speak, probably be in diapers the rest of their lives. And we have got to save these children. It is time to do something. We are going to do the investigations. We're going to figure out what's happening here. And I just thought, unassailable. What do you do with that? Finally, we're hearing what everyone's watching. We didn't grow up with autism. Rain Man as a movie was like entertaining because like, that's weird. I've never seen one of those guys. And now every one of us has a friend, a neighbor, a family member that has an autistic child. So it seems so obvious. And then all of a sudden, mainstream news starts attacking. And you've got Elizabeth Warren saying, I stand with autistic children. How could you demean them this way? And the narrative just overnight changed. And so my question really, Dr. Phil, is, I worked as an employee, as a producer, and I'm trying to figure out where that narrative comes from. Do these anchors and news people believe what they're saying? Or do they have a boss that is saying, this is the narrative we're taking? And you're the first time I've sat across from a television boss. You are one of the most successful entities that's ever been in television. I think you broke records almost every year I've ever watched you on television, certainly as I worked with you. But you're the boss. Did you ever get a call from a pharmaceutical company or a sponsor or something saying, I'm not happy with the show you just did? Have you ever had to tell someone, a supervising or executive below you, we're going to stop doing this type of material because whether it was just your own motivations? What's happening there? How are these stories getting changed that way?
Well, I think people, it's, I guess the phrase was coined in the Watergate era, follow the money.
Right.
And that's what the networks do, is follow the money. And the vast majority of advertising is from Big Pharma.
Right.
And so there are certain things that they don't want to talk about. And there was a different dynamic at CBS with me, as you know, because the networks own all the shows. I don't know how it works.
No, tell us. I think we're interested in how that works.
Yeah, they own the shows. You'll have talent on the show, like Steve Harvey on the Steve Harvey Show, but NBC or other production entities own the show. But on the Dr. Phil Show and the doctors, we own the show 100%.
Wow.
They had no ownership interest in the show whatsoever. And I remember it was fairly early on. I was dealing with somebody and they had suffered a terrible loss. I think it was a heroin overdose. And the conversation turned to grief, and they were asking me questions and the guest, and I shared the fact that I was a Christian and that I had a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. And on that particular day, several network executives were in the audience. And after the show, they came back and said, "Oh, it was such a heartwarming show, and it was so great." And but one thing, we don't really talk about religion and Christianity on the air. I said, "Really? Could I make one point?" They said, "Sure." I said, "You don't own this show." I own this show. And by the way, it's your number one show, so you can't do shit about that, which wasn't very Christian-like to say, I might add, acknowledge. But it is follow the money. I mean, if they get a call from a pharmaceutical rep that says, "Hey, you're kind of..."
That's who it goes. It goes to the owners of the network,
You bet.
and then it comes to you.
It goes to Les Moonves or George Cheeks or whoever happens to be in the chair at that point. And then they used to call me and then decided that doesn't make any, that's not going to make any difference. And so that's why we do talk about things like autism. That's why we do talk about the things that other people don't talk about. and they need to get in front of an audience, so they're going to advertise. And right now, there are a lot of left-leaning liberal companies and that don't want to advertise on Merit TV. And so we hope that those that are at least in the center or willing to hear both sides. I did a show recently about Hamas and Israel, and had this Nardine Kaswami on, who is a radical activist for Hamas. And people may criticize platforming her until they watch the conversation we had, because I took her to task on everything that she said. And people need to understand what that side of the argument says and how strong they are in their beliefs, so they don't underestimate the problem. They want all of us dead. They don't want just the Jews in Israel dead. They want all of us dead too. And there are a lot of them. Wow. And people need to understand that. And it's the same way with some of these diseases. The pharmaceutical companies make money if we're sick. They don't make money if we're well. They make money if we're sick. And insurance companies make money by not getting us well. They make money by stonewalling and denying and letting things turn and go to the next. They figure at some point you'll give up or you'll move on to another job and another insurance company, and it won't be their problem. There's a war of attrition going on, and somebody has to fight back. And my attitude is, not me, then who? You can't leave it for the next guy. And we just want to own the debate lane. We want to talk about autism. We want to talk about nutrition. We want to talk about pharmacy. And that's what Bobby Kennedy's doing, and he's doing it very, very well.
Yeah.
And I think people need to, look, you don't have to agree with everything somebody says to support things that you do agree with. That's identity politics. You don't have to love everything about somebody to love that person, right? I mean, you love everything about your spouse? If you say yes, you're lying. Really, I've said it before. One of my best friends is Ron White. You know who Ron White is, the comedian?
Yeah.
Now, I've known him a long time, and he's either smoking dope or drinking or both. And I do neither. I haven't had a drink in 60 years.
Congratulations.
I just never did. My dad was a drunk, and I thought I don't want to go down that road. So I tried to get drunk once in high school, and I got a hangover while I was drinking. In fairness, it was hot beer in the parking lot in the morning, so I didn't give it a fair chance. So, but really, I felt like somebody hit me in the head with an axe while I was drinking, so I just didn't ever. It was easy for me to stay away from it. But so I just am a teetotaler. Don't judge people who drink in moderation. I don't care. Robin does. We got the best wine cellar in town. But I mean, Ron drinks and smokes weed. They searched him one time in Florida and said, "Sorry, Mr. White, but we found a quarter ounce of weed in your bag here." And he said, "Well, officer, when I got a quarter ounce of weed, I consider myself out of weed." And they said, "Well, we don't. Put your hands behind your back." And they took him in. But so I don't agree with that part of it, but I love Ron. He's a great guy with a great heart. He's a great father. He's a great guy. I don't love everything about him, but I love him. And you may not agree with everything Bobby Kennedy says.
Right.
But that doesn't mean you can't support those things about him that are
going to affect your children.
With.
I mean, we can't believe we can't get Democrats to all just agree. Don't we want the chemicals out of our food? We're really going to stonewall them on this?
Yeah, I mean that's how can you politicize children?
Yeah,
I don't get that. I just absolutely don't get how you can politicize children. I've got a picture here. This picture, and I don't think this is lit up as much as it can be. Yeah, it is. These are Fruit Loops in Europe. These are Fruit Loops here.
Yeah.
Now, the reason that they're so different are the food coloring. They taste exactly the same. And by the way, the yellow ones and the green ones and the purple ones, they taste all the same too. You can blindfold kid and give him, they don't taste grape and lemon and all, they're just Cheerios. And the difference is the brightness of the colors because it markets better. You have no idea what's in these.
It's horrible.
And they eat the same. You blindfold a kid, he has no difference. Only difference is mom and dad are buying them and they're full of poison. And we got to take that out. It's just that simple. And we're doing that.
Yeah, it's happening.
And that's what Bobby wants to change. Who could argue with that? Just you want your kid to be eating chemicals so it looks better in the bowl?
Right.
As soon as you put milk on it, they look like soggy anyway.
I know.
Kid doesn't look at it, he's reading the box.
You've written several books on weight loss. I worked on one of your weight loss programs, which is always amazing to watch people lose weight just over a couple of weeks. And in all honesty, with MAHA Action and the work that we're doing, Robert Kennedy Jr. said to me as he was getting confirmed, Del, I need you to go out and we've actually got to make America healthy again. Like I can change regulations. We can try to move things out of the way. But what are those programs that are going to make that work? How do we inspire people? How do you get the movement to start, working on weight loss? And in all honesty, one of the things we keep discussing is that no matter how big the MAHA event, if you look around, if I got everyone in here to get healthier, it wouldn't make a blip on this scale because everyone I'm looking at right now is pretty healthy. This is the choir, right? We're speaking to the choir, and in order to, as Donald Trump has said to Bobby Kennedy, I'm giving you 2 years to reverse the chronic disease epidemic, to just show me that you can reverse the trajectory that it's on. Now, really, at the heart of that, if you can make an impact on diabetes and obesity at all, then we will see so many of those numbers start changing. But in your work in weight loss, and as we sit here thinking, it's easy to inspire this crowd to do a little bit more tomorrow and really go for it, and let's get inspired to do that. But what are those people, the difference between it's the eat to live people and they say the live to eat. What is it we have to do? Is it a community effort? How do you get to those individuals that are just, obese, they're sick, they're getting up, they're dragging, whether they're kids or they're adults? What have you found? Is there a way in there to get to that mind? What's going on inside of that mind?
Well, we are preaching to the choir because if you look around this group here, this is a pretty healthy looking group.
Yeah, exactly.
So we are preaching to the choir, but we have to wake up and decide that we all have to become spokespersons. We have to all become change agents and spread this word and talk about it. And I can tell you, you've got to drop one word from your vocabulary, and that's need. You can't be telling people what they need to do, because as soon as you do, they get defensive. Like, you need to, that's shoulds and must. People get real defensive psychologically. If you tell them instead, if you talk to people about what they deserve and what their children deserve, not what they need to do, but what they deserve to have in their life. The life expectancy in America is trending down. In the other top 38 economically developed countries, it's trending up. Here it's trending down. What we need to talk to people about is what we deserve, that we deserve to have higher quality life for a longer period of time, that we deserve for our children to have fewer diseases, fewer doctor visits, fewer time on medications, fewer medications to take, fewer sick days, fewer days where they're fighting allergies and all of these things that they're made susceptible to by the hormonal interference from the chemicals that we're feeding them. They deserve to have a better existence. And when you tell people what they deserve instead of what they need to do, it's real hard for them to say, no, I don't deserve better.
That's great.
My kids don't deserve to be healthy. What are you talking about? It's hard for them to push back against that. I did some research one time about malpractice for physicians, and there was one thing that predicted whether a doctor was going to get sued for malpractice or not. And this was to the point that they could cut off the wrong leg and not get sued if this was in play. And it was there were two things that reflected it: the number of words spoken between the physician and the patient, and the ownership the patient had in the treatment plan. If the patient was an active member of the treatment team, if they had ownership and authorship in the treatment plan, and they had an open dialogue with the doctor, and things didn't go well, it was like, well, we tried. Let's go to plan B. We tried. We signed off on this. We agreed to this, and we did our best. Let's go to plan B. As opposed to, you son of a bitch.
Right.
You didn't get me better. If it was, we did the best we could, now let's go to plan B, they have to take ownership in it. And that's what we need. We need these parents to agree our children deserve better, and we have the ability to give it to them. So you have to talk to them about what they deserve instead of what they need to do, because now you're lecturing them as opposed to empowering them. And that's what we have to do. We've got to get out and empower them to say, here's what we can do to change this, to turn this. And that's why I say we can do this in one generation. Knowledge is power. And if we can give them some simple information that says, if you flip something over and the list of ingredients are 37 long and you can't pronounce half of them, you don't want to be eating that food, because those are chemicals, those are preservatives, those are things that are meant to make that marketable, not nutritious. And if in just simple things like shopping around the perimeter of the supermarket, do you know why all that stuff's around the outside of the supermarket instead of the inside? Because it's got to be changed frequently, because real food spoils. You don't want food that lasts a millennial. If you get SpaghettiOs or something and they're good, as good 10 years from now as they are the day you bought them, something's really wrong. That food's not supposed to last more than a few days. And if we can educate them, give them power that they can pass on to their kids, we can really, but we've got to know the information to share the information.
Right.
Which means we got to get educated. I spent a lot of time in the litigation arena. That's what I was doing. That's how I met Oprah, actually. I defended her in the Mad Cow case. Y'all remember the Mad Cow case?
Yeah.
I was on her defense team up in Amarillo in the Mad Cow case. And that's how I wound up being on her show. And they called us to be on the show, and I said, no, I don't want to.
Well, you were a witness coach, right? Is that or some form of a? Is that where you came in on it?
Well, that's a little oversimplified.
Okay.
Where'd you get this guy? No, we had a trial science firm. And
okay, trial science.
We did a lot of things, and including prepping witnesses to tell the truth effectively. But it was interesting how if you give people the critical talking points to push back against the marketing machine, to push back against people that are trying to con you into something, you may know it's wrong, but if you give them the talking points to push back with, that narrative falls apart really fast.
Right.
And you can know it, but you got to have the talking points to do it. Knowledge is power. You give them the talking points, and that's why we're doing things like this.
Yeah.
So, and one thing we knew for sure is the closing argument never happened in the courtroom. That was a myth. Lawyers stood up, gave a closing argument. The real closing argument took place in the jury room. If they couldn't repeat the key points of the case, if they couldn't go back in that jury room where the bond had taken place and somebody couldn't articulate it back there, then you're in trouble. And that's what we have to do. We have to break this message down enough so people, they might be energized hearing Bobby Kennedy talk about it, hearing us discuss it, watching a show about it. But if they can't repeat that in a persuasive way on their own 2 weeks later, what was the point? We got to make it so the
Clean,
key,
simple, actionable steps.
The key points are clear, so they can push back when people are trying to say, "Oh, he's a nut job. He doesn't know. He's a conspiracy theorist. He's this. He's that." No, here are 6 points. Tell me where they're wrong. And if you can't, then let's do this together.
One of the things we're looking at with MAHA Action is, I believe if we can change the health of children, and really in the school lunch program, we're looking at trying to change school lunches from being processed, ultra-processed foods with, chips and cakes and, all sorts of garbage and skim milk instead of whole milk. You actually have to get a waiver. This is something we've just discovered. You can't just walk up to a school and offer them, even if we had a sponsor to do it. If we had a billionaire say, I'll take care of an entire school, we've got to find the expert in the state to give an exemption to that school to opt out of the ultra-processed, food pyramid that we're using right now and say we actually want to give them real steak, real chicken, real vegetables. It's illegal. We can't do that. So we're looking into all of those things. But I really want to get into, I suppose it's the politics of it. One of the things that's shocking is, as I said, I grew up a Democrat. Robert Kennedy Jr. at Kennedy was a Democrat, and I was sitting with my brother who's here today, and we were sitting in the Senate for the day of confirmation, and I watched every Democrat. People I used to think Bernie Sanders was like a hero, walking and voting no against Kennedy, and every Republican coming through the door and voting yes. And I turned to my brother because we grew up in Boulder. We were the crunchy granola. My parents were hippies. All of the natural health space was always the Democrats. And I said, today we are watching the Democrats are ceding all of natural health over the Republican Party. I watched it happen before my eyes, and it was shocking. Now, I'm wondering if the Republicans or conservatives or something are ready to take on, though, what it might take. And I want to get back to school lunches. If a school lunch right now is somewhere between $2.20 to give them the whole plate, which is insanely low, and maybe as high as $3.50, obviously, no matter what we do, if we want to go as far as organic, forget about it. But I want a real steak, piece of meat, real vegetables coming from a local farm. That cost is going to go up. And I feel like in the conservative space, because I'm kind of new to it, the argument's always, I don't want it, the government shouldn't have any paying for this, so it's just another tax on me. But do you think it's possible that we can convince this country to say we are paying $4.5 trillion every year in health, 90% of it chronic illness? We are going to take a cost right now. We're going to raise costs on ourselves to not only feed our children well and get rid of their chronic illness, but for all those kids that are maybe underserved and don't have parents cooking, they're going to see a real piece of meat. They're going to see real vegetables. They're going to learn, know how to cook just simply because they saw it instead of all processed foods they've been living on. We could literally change the future, but the cost is going to be on our generation right now. We're going to have a cost and trust it will make up somewhere in the distance. And you've talked about about how it's just me, it's my family, it's my kids, it's my costs right now, it's my bills right now. Can we get out of that immediate space and actually get this country to invest in something like feeding our children better?
I think you'll see costs go down right now. I don't think it will be 10 years from now or 20 years from now. It'll definitely be down then, but I think you'll see it start going down now. Allergies will start going down.
Yep.
Days missed in school will start going down. Anxiety and depression, those
almost immediately. I mean, like within
you'll start
weeks.
seeing that go down.
Yeah.
We're spending more on this than we're spending on our defense budget. So you will start seeing immediate changes. Levels of anxiety, depression, and loneliness are at all-time highs right now. And you will start seeing these things go down when we stop. We have malnourished children that are obese. They're overfed and undernourished. And you will start seeing that change immediately when you start feeding them nutritious foods.
Yeah.
And y'all remember that commercial? I don't even remember who it was, but they were talking about chicken, and they said, "Is that real chicken?" And they said, "Well, parts is parts."
Yeah, parts is parts. That's right.
That's what processed meat. That these are the leftover parts that they make into a paste and shape it into a slice of meat. Parts is parts.
Right.
This is meat paste shaped into a slice of meat. That's what we're eating and feeding. And get that picture in your mind.
Yeah.
This is what they scrape up off the floor. This is what they scrape up off the trays under the meat slicer, and they pack it together and cut it like a piece of meat and put it on your sandwich. Say, "Have a nice day." That's not good.
No.
And when we change that, you're going to see immediate changes. And
Is America ready to invest in that? Do you think we can convince them to invest in that? Because they're not looking at insurance costs and school food costs and making that. I mean, even if they see it, can we make them make that difference? Get involved.
I think so, because you're going to see the kids, you're going to see anxiety and depression start to turn, and maybe they would actually put their phones down and go outside.
Right.
Nah.
Parents go, why?
Yeah, they put it in their pocket and go outside.
To sort of wrap this up, I want to just move into the topic you know best, which is media. I think, in working with Robert Kennedy Jr., I was his director of communications. Thank you for all the training that made that possible. To think outside the box. You taught us how to think outside the box. We kept trying new things in television, new ways to capture attention. And we got credited with really having one of the stronger social media campaigns in the president run. But, I've been saying, that moment that bullet missed, just clipped Donald Trump's ear, I believe America dodged a bullet that day. Because right at that moment, we had the Democrats, and I don't mean to make this partisan, but the party I grew up in was promising to stop misinformation, which meant to me they were promising to censor, and they were promising to end our right to free speech, our First Amendment right. And I just thought, if we lose that First Amendment right, there is no other right. You have nothing left. You have no voice to fight for any of the other rights if they decide to take them. And it seems so critical. And I think we saw this in its darkest form. And I think why this incredible moment with President Trump and Robert Kennedy Jr. stepping into HHS, I think that happened because of COVID. I think we had to go through COVID to see how close and how quickly an authoritarian perspective of governance could take over even the greatest democracy in the world. And I'm reflecting because I watched you actually, surprisingly, I just happened to see one of, you really went public in a moment in the middle of COVID and really called for sanity and really sort of made a very strong statement about the right to choose, the right to whether you want to wear a mask. You just kind of called out the bullshit, frankly, and I was surprised. I was like, oh my God, that was risky.
It was horrifying to me that this was happening in America. And what I said at the time was that this prolonged quarantine was going to create more damage mentally, emotionally, physically, and actual death than the virus would ever do to our children. And people said that was an insane statement. And I said, well, you may be, but it's correct. And it proved to be exactly correct.
I mean, one of the world's worst "I told you so's" of all time.
Yeah, and none of those people that said I was crazy for saying that circle back around to say, never mind, you were right. Not one person, not one media outlet
Let me stop
has
you there.
ever said.
Where is the apology, by the way? Where is the apology from anyone in media, anyone in government that pushed all of those lies?
Yeah, and I wasn't sitting out on the curb waiting for him to come by. I wasn't looking for that. But what I said at the time was, you don't want to shut down the schools for an extended period of time, because before COVID, anxiety, depression, and loneliness were already at all-time highs. And if you shut down the schools, you take away the place that they go for their social interaction. You take away their support systems. You take away everything that gives them a chance to. You're not going to get a hit if you're not swinging. And if you take away their chance to get up to bat, if you take away their chance to have a support group, then you are really pulling out from under them the only reward system they possibly have. And think about this. Those children that are being sexually molested and abused, mandated reporters are school teachers, cafeteria workers, bus drivers, coaches, counselors. You've now cut them off. And we saw referrals to Department of Child and Family Services and Child Protective Services drop as much as 50% across this nation. Is that because they stopped being molested and abused by 50%? Of course not. We've sent them home and locked them up with their abusers. We just took their eyes off of them. So nobody was watching to protect them. And so what they said when I called them out is, well, it's a new virus and we did the best we could with what we had. No, you did not. You did not do the best you could with what you
Amen.
had. You had a new hammer and everything looked like a nail. So you used that power and you shut down the schools, and you had no plan to reopen them. And the reason they weren't reopened is because the teachers' unions blocked it. And they said, we're not political. And the LA USD, which is the largest in the country, their director said, we will open when you pass the wealth tax, but we're not political. Bullshit, you're not political. Right. And you threw our kids under the bus. And the pediatric epidemiologist said this probably costs 15 million years of life lost.
Wow.
That's how much it's going to shorten these children's lives, because they will do less educational attainment, so they will have lesser jobs, and lesser jobs are more risky because they're working in blue collar around machinery and stuff like that. They'll get injured. They have less insurance, which means they'll have slower intervention on disease, which means it will progress more. So they will die from the disease rather than get it treated. And it'll take 2-3 years off the life of 50 million public school children. Do the math. It's 15 million years of life lost. That's what I said, and they all said I was crazy. I stand by it then. I stand by it today. They didn't know what they were doing, and they are the very ones that had the stats on high anxiety, depression, and loneliness.
They should have known
The very
better.
ones that had the stats are the ones that shut down the support system. Shame on them for doing it.
Shame on them. I look at, and to bring it, yeah, please. That took a lot of courage, and a lot of people, I mean, I think because you had the power you did, they couldn't do anything about it. Many people lost their voices in doing that. How the government got away with that, how media got away with that, was really in this shaming, in this greater good, that we should care more about the people out there, the greater good of society over my own individual health. I had always said growing up, you know, I would have this debate with friends. I was fascinated with it. which was Nazis. I would always argue with my friends, I think you'd be a Nazi. I think we would all be Nazis if we were socialized correctly. And most of my friends would say, no way, I would never be that. I was like, I disagree. I think if you're, in the right circumstances, and you're trained to believe a certain way, I think anyone would be a Nazi, or at least 99% of people. And I think COVID proved me right. But what shocked me was that it only took about 5 minutes. I mean, it was literally like, turn in your neighbor if they're not wearing a mask. Here's a number to call. People are like, dude, I'm seeing one right now. I mean, it happened so fast. Get a vaccine to protect your neighbors. That's, and if you don't care about anyone. I mean, the sickest part of this was they preyed on the most beautiful part of human beings, which is our empathy. They used our empathy against us. And to wrap this up, I would love your thoughts on the United States of America, because it seems to me that though we should care about our neighbors, and we are, I'm a Christian too, and love your neighbor as yourself, this experiment in America, and you talked about how politics comes back to the person, it comes back to my life, my children. This is the only nation I know of in the world that built the entire idea around independence, that the individual is who we're supposed to care about, that it's the rights endowed to me by God, not by my government. My Constitution, my Bill of Rights is telling the government what they can't do to me, that it's my individual life, that we believe in America, if I celebrate the greatness of myself, which is what you have done your entire career, trying to bring the best out of every human being, is that working for you? Is a term, I remember you would always, is that working for you? Because if not, in a line you would say, why are you playing a side role in your movie? If life is a movie, I remember it's always stuck with me. I thought about it at times where I was getting my ass kicked in life and saying, why am I playing the side role in my own movie?
Yeah,
We're
exactly.
supposed to be the leads in our movie, and yet our education system, our universities are telling us, no, you are literally just an extra in this movie that's called life. What do we do now? And is that American dream correct? Can we love each other, but love ourselves first?
Well, I don't think it's selfish to love yourself first, by the way, because you can't give away what you don't have. If you don't love yourself, if you don't take care of yourself, you're going to be emotionally bankrupt by the time your kids are grown and they need you to be there at their wedding to give them away or help them pick out this and do that, to be a grandparent. If you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of anybody else. It's not selfish to take care of yourself. You owe it to the people that love you to take care of yourself. And I am the incurable optimist. I don't think we're near as divided as the media wants us to believe we are. Because we all want the same things. We all want a great country. We all want a safe country. We all want affordability in our lives. We all want our children to grow up healthy and happy and secure. And anytime I sit down and negotiate with somebody, I always insist that we start out talking about what we can agree on first. Yeah. Let's make a list of everything we agree on first. We can get to other stuff in a minute. Let's do this. And pretty soon you find out we agree on an awful lot of stuff. We might disagree on how we're going to get there, but if you can find that unity first, then the other things maybe don't seem quite as hard. And I am the incurable optimist. And I said if Kamala Harris had been elected president, she would have been my president. If Trump's elected, he'll be my president. When Obama was president, he was my president. When Bush was president, he was my president. I think one of the most important days in this country during my lifetime was 9/12. It wasn't 9/11. That was a dark day. But think about the day after 9/11. Every one of us was an American. We weren't Democrats. We weren't Republicans. We were all Americans. And I just hope we don't have to have that kind of day again to remind us that we're all in this together. We're all Americans. I was just in western North Carolina where the hurricane came through and working with people there that had been so devastated. And I was in one line getting mud out of somebody's basement on a kind of conga line and nobody was asking who they were passing the bucket of mud to. They didn't ask, are you a Democrat or a Republican? Before they handed them that bucket. They didn't care. I absolutely, and I said at the time, it was absolutely America at its best. Everybody was helping everybody else. And I think we can get back to that. And I don't think we're as far from it as the legacy media would want us to believe. So I'm optimistic. I think we can do it. I think we can get there. And I think all it takes, what's the saying? I think it was Wolfe that said it, I forget, that all that is necessary for evil to prevail is for good men to do nothing.
Yeah.
I'm butchering the quote, I'm sure. But it's true. We have to speak up. We have to be heard. And if we are, there are more of us than there are of these fringe activists. We just need to speak up and speak the truth. And I always tell people, fact check me. If there's something I've said that's wrong, kick it to the curb and replace it with what's right. I'm not the repository of all knowledge. I do my homework, but if I get it wrong, replace it with what's right. Think critically and be optimistic. I think we can, I think we're good. I think we can turn this around. And people like Bobby Kennedy, who are not afraid to shake it up, are going to be the game changers in this thing. And God bless him. I'm glad we've got him. I really am. And like I say, I'm proud to have him at Merit Monday, and we're going to shake it up some more.
God bless you, Dr. Phil.
You bet. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for being here tonight. If you want to check out all the work we're doing at MAHA Action, go to mahaaction.com. We really want to not only just push legislation, we also think it's time to build a new medical system that, is inspiring actual real daily health, making today better than yesterday, bringing all of the different alternative practices and those practitioners that bring health without making the drug the first choice. We're not against pharma, but I think we should be using other alternative medicines. There's better ways to do this. I think the future of health and the future of this nation, I think our brightest day is right upon us. And I hope we can work with what Dr. Phil is saying. Your voice is important right now. We have a window. We might not have had this voice. We need to take advantage of this time with a government that's listening and moving, and a health department that is really giving us opportunities in a moment where we're not going to be censored to tell the truth. I want to thank every one of you for being a part of this mission, and I really want to thank Dr. Phil for my life, my career, and the part that you've played in it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for everything you've done to support us.
Right. Good.
Thank you.
Check out Merit. Be watching all the stuff Dr. Phil's doing because he owns it. They don't own him. It's a huge difference.
Yeah, and you can watch the town hall on Merit TV. It's what time is it on, John? What time we air?
7 o'clock
7 o'clock local.
on Monday.
Yeah, on Merit TV. So
Let's check that out and support both Dr. Phil and Robert Kennedy Jr. Yeah, that'd be great.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.